Hello and welcome to the FatBoss Guide to Krosus on Mythic in the Nighthold.
Yes, this fight has very few changes from Heroic, so instead of learning and countering new mechanics that you normally would do on a Mythic boss, this fight is more about mastering the old mechanics that you dealt with on Heroic, whilst dealing as much damage as possible. Now this fight has a pretty tight DPS check, so you want to bring 2 tanks, 3 healers, and 15 DPS. If you do get to pick and choose what DPS you're going to bring, you want to bring as much single target damage as possible. However, you do need to make sure that you bring a decent amount of range DPS, otherwise you might struggle soaking all of the burning pitch patches. Now in terms of a DPS requirement, assuming that both tanks combined do roughly the damage of 1 DPS, you're looking at just under 600k DPS per person to kill the boss before the 6-minute enrage timer, and that doesn't include any damage to the adds that spawn from the burning pitch.
And talking about the burning pitch, we might as well get this out of the way now. It's probably the #1 thing that is likely to wipe you on Mythic. Any adds that do spawn is really negative because of course it's just taking damage away from the boss, but also they can very easily kill people if you do not interrupt or stun them. On Mythic, Krosus actually empowers these adds and causes them to grow in size. After 10 seconds or so, any of the big adds will explode and will pretty much wipe your raid. So any adds that do spawn, you need to kill them off as soon as possible, but make sure you prioritize the big ones first. Now, even though the patch locations are somewhat random, assigning players to certain areas of the platform can really help. So before you pull the boss, make sure you assign every single person in the raid to a preset location. We split the platform into 6 sections and just assign the raid evenly across these areas as much as we can. Now, when you are actually soaking, it's safe to take 2 patches at any given time, assuming that you're at full health. However, if you're going to soak 3 patches, which sometimes does happen, you want to make sure that you use a personal cooldown or an immunity. The amount of damage these patches do on Mythic is way higher than Heroic, and dying for the sake of soaking that 1 extra patch is not worth it. It's better off to let the ad spawn and just kill it off. But apart from soaking those patches, the rest of the fight really is just about optimizing your output and dealing with certain ability overlaps. Before we go into the healing side of things, let's talk about DPS first.
So of course on Mythic, the Fell Beam, you do need to move out of it because otherwise it will one-shot you, but one thing that you do need to know is that the beam will always take turns at what side of the platform it will go down. You can use this knowledge to pre-move at the point in your rotation when you have an instant cast or generally some downtime. This way you won't interrupt your damage when you need to move from the incoming Fell Beam. So as an example, if the boss starts with a beam down the left-hand side of the platform, you know that the next beam that's going to be coming in is on the right-hand side. You can use this knowledge to already move to the left-hand side of the platform whenever it suits you, rather than having to react to the incoming beam on the right-hand side. To add, standing in the middle of the platform rather than right on the edges on either side makes it so you have to move far less when each of the Fell Beams come in, just once again minimizing the amount of movement that you do just to maximize the amount of damage that's going out. And apart from that, one of the biggest ways of increasing overall raid damage is just by soaking the adds. The less adds that spawn, the less people have to switch, and the more damage that can go out on the boss. And any adds that do spawn, they really need to die. You cannot ignore them, although sometimes it's really tempting to. Nope, they do need to die, otherwise someone in your raid will.
Now moving away from damage to something that's, well, a little bit more interesting, healing. So at certain points of this fight, you are forced to use healing cooldowns because there are extremely high damage overlaps that come in. And if you don't use a healing cooldown, you will definitely wipe. This first happens on the second set of burning pitches, as you'll have an orb land almost immediately afterwards. As soon as the pitches start to spawn, we use a healing tide, and this tops us up ready for the orb. And then as soon as we've soaked the circles, we run immediately away from the player that has the orb, and he runs towards the back of the room. We then use a slightly late Aura of Sacrifice to top up the orb damage, as 5 seconds later you'll have the 5th slam. And if you time the AM correctly by using it slightly late on that orb, the AM will actually cover both sets of damage. The only other really rough part of the fight is when you have one section of the bridge left. Every set of orbs that you have at this point, you need to make sure there is as much room between yourself and the orb player just to keep raid damage to a minimum. Now the very first orb is actually followed immediately afterwards by a slam. This combination is pretty lethal, so we actually use a Trank and a Spirit Link for this overlap. To add, from this point onwards, any pitches that spawn are ridiculously stacked and it's very easy to soak 3 or more. So instead of just standing in the middle, we actually soak around the edges and leave the middle up. That does cause a shit ton of adds to spawn all on top of each other, but fortunately there are AoE stuns in the game, but also melee cleave is at a pretty mental state at the moment, so as soon as these adds spawn they instantly just explode. However, if you do have immunities left up at this point, standing in the middle and popping them just to make it so no ad spawn probably isn't a bad idea. When the second orb comes in, it's again also followed by another slam. We just use an Oral Mastery to cover this damage, and then the third orb is just covered by a healing tide. From this point onwards, there isn't really any other overlaps. In fact, there isn't anything else to heal. So you just want to then swap to the boss and just try and kill him, as you only have 15 seconds left or so until the boss actually hits the enrage and you wipe. But that's about it. The main thing, though, that you really need to know about this fight, if you take anything away from this video, is soak the ads. It doesn't matter who you are, everyone's job in the raid is to soak the ads, and that is mainly done just by, again, setting up these locations before you even pull the boss, so everyone knows exactly where they need to go when the burning pitches spawn. If you do it perfectly, you can make it so absolutely no ads spawn whatsoever. That isn't really realistic. You'll probably get anywhere between 1 to 3 each time. Any more than that, and you fucked up, and you're going to struggle with boss damage. But apart from that, there's not much else to cover.
Yeah, the rest of it is just keeping an eye on your boss timers, honestly, because each of the mechanics that come in, if you don't deal with them properly, they're most likely to one-shot you. So if you can just plan ahead knowing, oh, beam's coming in, I need to be here, or an orb's coming in, so I need to make sure that I can get to the back of the bridge if I need to. Just think ahead, keep an eye on your timers, and just don't panic. And kill the ads when they do spawn. God, just make sure you kill them.
Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. If this guide did help you out, then do drop us down a like. If you'd like to see the written guide that we've made for this encounter, you can find that out on Wowhead. The link for that is in the description. Also in the description is a link to our Patreon. Thank you for all the people that joined us and supported us over on Patreon. You guys are the best. And we shall see you all in the next video.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.